Capricorns are cold. They care too much about money. They don't feel anything. You've heard these things before. You may have even believed them. But what if I told you that everything you've been told about Capricorn is a distraction? What if the image of the emotionless workaholic was never the real story? There is a side of Capricorn that most horoscopes will never touch. Not because it isn't true, but because it's too uncomfortable, too ancient, too sacred, too real. This is the zodiac sign that carries civilization on its back. The one that holds the crumbling pillars of tradition when no one else will. The one who knows, deep in their bones, that time is not infinite, and that someone has to build what lasts. Yet nobody ever asks what it costs. Behind every Capricorn who climbs the mountain is a soul that has walked through storms no one ever saw. Behind the calm exterior is a heart that bleeds silently. And behind every accomplishment is a grief no astrologer dares to speak about. Until now. In this video, we're going far beyond what you read in magazines. No cliché talk about ambition. No hollow praise about discipline. We're going to walk deep into the cave that most people never dare to enter. The dark cave where Capricorn's power was born. And once you see the truth behind this sign, you'll understand why Capricorns are not cold. They're forged in fire and silence. Because the truth is, Capricorn didn't choose to be strong. They were left with no other option. Part 1. The Mask of Control. The first thing most people notice about a Capricorn is the armor. The way they speak without unnecessary words. The way they organize chaos. The way they stay calm even when everything is on fire. To the outside world, they appear strong, collected, and impenetrable. But what no one sees is that the mask is not a choice. It's a necessity. Capricorn learned early that emotions could not always be trusted. That softness could be punished. That chaos needed structure and someone had to be the one to build it. So, they became that person. They became the steady hand in the storm. The one who didn't cry when the house was breaking. The one who took on adult responsibilities while still a child. Many Capricorns carry stories of growing up too fast. Not because they wanted to, but because life gave them no other option. They were the child who listened while the adults argued. The student who stayed quiet while others rebelled. The teenager who worked to support the family. And every time they showed emotion, they were told, "Be strong. Don't make a scene. Get over it." So they did. They buried their feelings deep under layers of logic and responsibility. They built walls not to keep people out, but to keep themselves functioning. Because if they ever let the feelings flood in, everything might collapse. This is the great misunderstanding of Capricorn. People assume they don't feel. In truth, they feel too much. So much that they've had to lock it down just to survive. The mask of control is not about pride. It's about protection. And yet, that mask comes with a price. Many Capricorns feel disconnected from their own hearts. They achieve, they build, they conquer. But inside, there is a longing that never fully disappears. A hunger to be held, not for what they've done, but for who they are beneath the surface. But the fear is always there. If I take off this mask, will anyone stay? Capricorn fears vulnerability, not because they lack courage, but because they have seen what happens when structures fall. They know what it costs to rebuild. So they would rather suffer in silence than risk falling apart. But here's the deeper truth. The mask that once protected them can also become the prison that isolates them. The very strength that helped them survive can also keep love out. The control that created order can also choke joy. So the first lesson on the dark side of Capricorn is this. What appears to be control is often a cry for safety. What looks like coldness is actually grief. What feels like distance is often just fear wearing armor. Life lesson from part 1. No matter how strong you become, true safety is not built by hiding your heart behind walls. It is found in the courage to reveal what's real even when it's raw. Capricorn's greatest evolution begins the moment they realize that letting someone in isn't weakness. It's the ultimate act of trust. And trust, when given wisely, is stronger than any mask. Part 2. The Saturn curse. There's a reason why Capricorn doesn't laugh as easily as others. Why they often seem 10 years older than they are. Why even as children, they carried the posture of someone who had seen too much. That reason has a name. Saturn. The ruler of Capricorn. The ancient god of time, karma, and discipline. Not the gentle kind of discipline that teaches you how to paint inside the lines, but the brutal, soul-carving kind that asks, what will you do when nothing comes easy? While other signs are ruled by planets of expansion, love, and expression, Capricorn is ruled by limitation. And Saturn doesn't give. It tests. It restricts. It watches in silence as you fall, then waits to see what you'll do with the pieces. This is the curse and the gift of Capricorn's ruler. From an early age, many Capricorns experience an invisible pressure. A deep sense that they must be strong, must be responsible, must do more, carry more, prove more. And if they don't, no one else will. Saturn doesn't reward effort immediately. It delays gratification. It teaches through resistance. And Capricorn is its favorite student. While other kids play, Capricorn calculates. While others rebel, Capricorn plans. While others fall apart, Capricorn tightens their grip on control not because they want to, but because they must. This is what makes them appear so serious. It's not a personality trait. It's spiritual training. They are learning, from the moment they arrive, that time is always ticking. That nothing lasts unless you build it brick by brick. That love must be earned, safety must be secured, and purpose must be proven. Saturn does not bless instantly, but when it does, it blesses permanently. That's why Capricorns often bloom later in life. Why their youth is heavy, but their older years are profound. They are not late bloomers. They are timeless trees growing deep roots in the dark, so that one day they can stand taller than anyone else. But this curse can also harden them. When life constantly tests you, you begin to expect the test even when there is none. You distrust joy. You question peace. You sabotage rest, because Saturn has trained you to believe that ease is suspicious. Capricorns often struggle to celebrate. They climb one mountain and immediately look for the next. Not because they're greedy, but because they are haunted by the whisper. If you stop, it might all fall apart. And yet, Saturn is not only the destroyer, he is also the master builder. Once Capricorn accepts that suffering is not punishment, but preparation, they begin to transform. They stop fearing the pressure, and start understanding its purpose. They realize that Saturn doesn't want to break them. He wants to build them, to carve them into wise elders, keepers of truth, souls who carry weight not for ego, but for the world. Life lesson from part 2. Pressure is not always the enemy. Sometimes it's a forge, and sometimes the hardest teacher gives the most sacred lesson. Capricorn's path is not about escaping the weight, but learning how to carry it with grace, until one day, they realize, it was never a curse. It was a calling. Part 3. The wounded childhood. Before Capricorn became the one everyone relied on, before the career, the control, the calculated strength, they were a child. And like all children, they came into the world wide open, feeling everything, needing comfort, craving safety. But many Capricorns never got to stay in that softness for long, because somewhere along the way, something happened that forced them to grow up too soon. Sometimes it's obvious: a broken home, financial struggle, emotional neglect. But often, it's more invisible. Maybe the parents leaned on them emotionally, sharing burdens they were too young to carry. Maybe they became the peacemaker in a house full of storms. Maybe they were simply the good child, the one who didn't cause trouble, because they saw how fragile the adults around them really were. Whatever the story, the wound is the same. Capricorn learned that their needs didn't matter, or worse, that their needs made things worse. So they silenced them. They began to believe that love had to be earned, through achievement, perfection, responsibility. That rest was selfish. That failure meant abandonment. That if they didn't stay strong, everything might collapse. And so the child disappeared. In their place stood the overachiever, the quiet fixer, the old soul with tired eyes and a checklist for survival. But here's the truth that no one ever told Capricorn. That child never left. They just went underground. Still there. Still aching to be seen. Still waiting for someone to say, "You don't have to be strong right now. You're allowed to just be." For many Capricorns, adulthood becomes a repetition of this old script. They attract people who depend on them, jobs that overwork them, standards that exhaust them, all reinforcing the childhood belief. You are loved for what you do, not for who you are. And when they finally burn out, they blame themselves. They say, "I should have worked harder. I should have seen this coming. I can't afford to fall apart." But falling apart is not failure. It's a return to the part of them that never got to be held, never got to play, never got to be imperfect and still feel safe. Capricorn's wounded childhood is not just a memory. It's a silent architect, one that shapes their adult life until they bring it to light. And healing begins not through doing more, but through allowing more, allowing softness, allowing mistakes, allowing the possibility that they are worthy, even when they are not useful. Life lesson from part 3. The most dangerous lie Capricorn was ever taught is this: that strength means never needing anyone. But real strength isn't built by denying your needs. It's built by finally honoring them. You don't stop being strong when you ask for love. You start becoming whole. Part 4. The climb is a prison. Every Capricorn knows the image. The goat on the mountain. Climbing. Always climbing. It's the metaphor people love to use. That Capricorns are unstoppable. That they were born to rise. That they thrive on ambition. But few ever stop to ask, what happens when you reach the top and feel nothing? For Capricorn, the climb often begins as survival. They climb to escape poverty. They climb to escape chaos. They climb to prove they're enough. At first, every step upward brings a sense of control, security, recognition. But somewhere along the way, the climb stops being a choice. It becomes a compulsion. Capricorn begins to believe that movement is the only thing keeping them safe. That stopping is dangerous. That rest equals failure. And so they climb harder. Long after their body is tired. Long after their soul is whispering for something softer. Because if they pause, they might have to feel. They might have to face the emptiness they've been avoiding. The truth is, Capricorn's mountain is not always about ambition. Sometimes, it's a fortress. A place to hide from grief, from love, from vulnerability. Success becomes a shield, but it also becomes a cage. Many Capricorns build empires they don't even enjoy. They acquire titles that don't touch their heart. They become everything the world admires, but feel invisible inside. Because the world claps for achievement, but it rarely asks, "Are you happy?" And Capricorn has learned not to ask that either. They tell themselves, "I'll rest when it's done. I'll feel better when I earn more. I'll be free when I succeed." But success never frees you, if you built it from fear. The climb, if unconscious, becomes endless. No summit. No satisfaction. Just a higher goal. A steeper hill. And deeper exhaustion. But here's the turning point. The mountain doesn't disappear when you stop climbing. It becomes something else. It becomes a teacher. Because the truth is, Capricorn was never meant to climb forever. They were meant to build, yes, but not at the cost of their soul. They were meant to rise, yes, but not to escape themselves. The climb is not the purpose. It's the path to something greater. Inner mastery. And that begins when Capricorn dares to ask, what am I building and why? Life lesson from part 4. You don't have to prove your worth by exhausting yourself. You don't have to climb just to survive. The summit means nothing if it costs you your soul. Your life's meaning isn't found at the top. It's found in the why behind every step. And sometimes, the most courageous thing a Capricorn can do is to stop, to rest, to breathe, to ask, Is this still mine to carry? Part 5. The Shadow of Legacy. Capricorn doesn't just build for now. They build for forever. While others chase dreams of excitement or freedom, Capricorn asks the question most avoid. What will remain after I'm gone? They are architects of time, guardians of history, souls tasked with anchoring what's real in a world that forgets too quickly. But this deep desire to leave something behind, a legacy, can become its own kind of shadow. Because in the quest to create something that lasts, Capricorn often forgets to last themselves. They pour their energy into careers, causes, families, and empires. They become the backbone of systems, the quiet builders of structure and tradition. They carry the weight of others. They uphold values no one else honors anymore. And while the world benefits from their effort, Capricorn often suffers in silence. It's a silent pain. The kind that doesn't scream, it just lingers. In the tired eyes, the sleepless nights, the growing sense that no one will ever truly understand the weight they carry. Because here's the secret truth. Capricorn doesn't want applause. They want meaning. But when meaning is tied solely to duty, life becomes heavy. And when the only way you know how to love is to give until you're empty, you begin to forget what it feels like to be loved for just existing. This is the shadow of legacy, when the mission becomes everything, and the self begins to disappear. Capricorns often say, if I can just finish this, if I can just make sure they're safe, if I can just hold it all together a little longer. But they rarely say, what about me? Legacy without self is sacrifice, and sacrifice without balance becomes soul erosion. There is nobility in building for the future. But if Capricorn isn't careful, they become monuments themselves, solid, enduring, but no longer alive. Here's the truth that changes everything. Legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you live through. It's not only the empire, it's the energy. It's not just the structure, it's the spirit that moves through it. Life lesson from Part 5. Legacy means nothing if it costs you your aliveness. You were never meant to just leave something behind. You were meant to embody something powerful while you're still here. So let this be your reminder. The most sacred legacy you can ever create is a life that honors your soul, not just your survival. Part 6. The Initiation, Saturn Return. Every Capricorn is born under Saturn's watch. But not every Capricorn is ready for Saturn's test. It begins quietly, sometimes around age 28 or 29. Everything that once felt stable starts to shake. Careers fall apart. Relationships end. Old identities no longer fit. And something inside whispers, you can't keep living like this. This is not coincidence. It is the Saturn return. The sacred initiation that marks the end of who you thought you were, and the beginning of who you're meant to become. For most signs, this return is a shock. But for Capricorn, it's more than just an astrological event. It's a spiritual confrontation. Because for years, Capricorn has done everything right. They've sacrificed. They've endured. They've built. They've carried. But Saturn doesn't care about what the world calls success. He comes back to ask one question. Was it real? Not real in the eyes of society, but in the eyes of the soul. Was the life Capricorn built authentic? Or was it just a fortress made of fear? Was the love they gave pure? Or was it just duty disguised as care? Was the career aligned with purpose? Or just a trauma response dressed in productivity? During Saturn return, illusions collapse. Not to punish, but to purify. Because Saturn is not just the god of restriction. He is the initiator of truth. And no Capricorn gets to escape that truth forever. This period can feel like a breakdown. But in reality, it is a refining fire. It strips away what is false, so that only the essential remains. Some Capricorns will lose everything they thought defined them. But in that loss, something ancient awakens. The part of them that was never born to serve systems, but to master them. The part of them that didn't come here to be perfect, but to be sovereign. The part of them that isn't here to repeat family karma, but to break it wide open. Saturn return marks the turning point. From survival to sovereignty. From structure to spirit. From control to conscious power. And if Capricorn accepts the invitation, they don't just rebuild, they resurrect. Life lesson from part 6. Sometimes the universe breaks what you built. Not because it hated your work, but because you deserve to build something real. You weren't born to live in a castle made of fear. You were born to live in alignment with your soul. The Saturn return is not the end of Capricorn. It's the beginning of the master they were always meant to become. Part 7. The weight of authority. There's a presence that Capricorn carries. It walks into a room before they do. It speaks even in their silence. It commands without ever needing to shout. This is the presence of earned authority. Not the kind granted by titles or applause, but the kind that's carved from years of responsibility, of holding things together while others fell apart. Capricorn doesn't seek power for the sake of control. They step into power because someone has to. Because when things fall into chaos, everyone looks at them, and no one else is prepared to carry the weight. They become the leader, the stabilizer, the anchor. Not because they craved it, but because they were the only one strong enough to hold it. But this kind of authority comes at a cost. Because once you become the one others depend on, you stop being allowed to fall apart. You stop being asked, "How are you?" You become the structure, not the person. Capricorns are often promoted before they're ready. Not just in work, but in life. They become the adult child, the reliable friend, the manager of emotions in every room. And slowly, the soul begins to bend under the pressure of being everything for everyone. The world sees the Capricorn who succeeds, but they don't see the toll it takes. The sleepless nights, the quiet panic behind the eyes, the constant scanning for what might fall next. Because when you're the one who always holds it together, you live with the fear that if you drop the ball, everything will break. And yet, Capricorn rarely complains. Why? Because they take pride in being strong. And because they've been taught that authority is a burden you don't question, you carry it. But here's the hidden danger. When you carry so much for so long, you forget that you're allowed to be held too. Capricorn begins to internalize the role. I am the one who supports. I am the one who fixes. I am the one who leads. But no one is only one thing. Even the strongest souls need soft spaces. Even the wisest leaders need rest. Even the mountain needs a sky to lean into. Real authority doesn't come from how much you carry. It comes from how honestly you live. And the deepest power Capricorn can ever access is not in appearing unshakable, but in leading from a place of truth, even when that truth is vulnerable. Life lesson from part 7. You don't become powerful by pretending nothing touches you. You become powerful by letting your humanity guide your strength. True authority isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And Capricorn's greatest evolution begins the moment they realize you don't have to carry the world alone to be worthy of leading it. Part 8. When the silence wasn't peace, but suppression. Capricorn, there's a kind of silence you've mastered. Not the kind that brings peace, but the kind that buries screams. For years, you wore the silence like armor. Not because you didn't have words, but because you knew. If you really spoke your truth, the entire structure around you would collapse. So you held your tongue. You smiled when your soul was bleeding. You said I'm fine when your world was cracking. Because you believed that holding it together was nobler than letting it fall apart. But here's the spiritual truth, Capricorn. Sometimes, divine order requires destruction. Not to harm you, but to rebuild you beyond survival. Because God never asked you to keep silent so others could stay comfortable. God never asked you to shrink so others could shine. And God never asked you to betray yourself in the name of love. This silence you lived in wasn't serenity. It was suppression. And now, that suppression is cracking. You feel it in your bones. In the things you can no longer tolerate. In the people who feel foreign now. in the rooms where your energy no longer fits. It's not rebellion. It's revelation. The silence is ending because your truth is too sacred to stay buried. So let the voice come back. Let the tears fall. Let the sacred rage speak. Let your soul finally rise, not in rebellion, but in sacred remembrance of who you are. Because you didn't come here to survive silently. You came to transform loudly. Life lesson from Part 8. Capricorn, silence is not always a virtue. Especially when it becomes the prison that keeps you from healing. You've suffered in silence long enough. Now, your voice is your medicine. Your truth is your path. And your healing begins the moment you stop apologizing for feeling deeply. Let divine order break the dam you once called control. Because what's on the other side of your silence is power you've never touched before. Part 9, the door that closed, was never yours to begin with. Capricorn, there's something you need to know, not in your mind, but in your soul. That door you kept knocking on, that place you tried to belong, that love you begged to feel, was never truly yours. Not because you weren't worthy of it, but because it was never aligned with your highest destiny. You see, for years, you misunderstood the silence. You thought the unanswered prayers meant you weren't good enough. You thought being ignored meant you had to try harder. You thought being excluded was punishment. But here's the truth. Divine order doesn't always speak in words. Sometimes, it speaks in closed doors, in delayed answers, in painful exits, in empty spaces. Because what you were waiting on was beneath your calling. And what you kept reaching for would have caged your soul instead of liberating it. Capricorn, you have a legacy written in the stars. But the universe knew you wouldn't walk toward it. Until everything false walked away. So those people who left, they were never meant to walk your full path. Those jobs that ended, they were chapters, not your identity. That relationship that broke you, it broke you open. And now, divine order is rewriting everything. You're no longer chasing doors that weren't built for your light. You're no longer begging to be seen in places designed to ignore you. You're no longer sacrificing your soul to be accepted by the blind. You're walking forward, not as a victim, but as a vessel of sacred timing. Life lesson from Part 9. Capricorn, stop blaming yourself for the doors that closed. You didn't fail. You were redirected. Because the universe knew what you couldn't yet see. That your destiny required separation before elevation. Every silence, every rejection, every ending, was the universe saying, that was never your home. And now that you finally understand that, the right doors are about to swing wide open. And this time, they won't close. Conclusion, your time is no longer coming. It's here. Capricorn, you were not just patient. You were chosen to walk through fire and never scream. You were assigned the silence because your soul could carry it. You were built for the storm, not to break, but to bend and rebuild what others would have let die. And now, the time of restoration is not a promise in the distance. It's already begun. That's why you feel the shifts, the subtle nudges, the sudden clarity, the strange peace even while nothing looks certain. That's divine order rearranging your life from the roots. You are no longer in survival mode. You are no longer waiting for the validation of those who never saw your worth. You are no longer stuck in places you've outgrown. Now is the time to reclaim what was always yours. Your voice, your power, your peace, your divine timing. Because what you lost in silence, you're about to recover in ways that leave even you speechless. Final life lesson. Capricorn, this wasn't just a season of silence. It was a sacred initiation. An unspoken agreement between your soul and the heavens. And now that you've endured, now that you've healed in hidden places, the universe will restore you, publicly. Those who doubted you will witness your rise. Those who silenced you will hear your name louder than ever. And those who walked away, they'll see you walk through a door they were never allowed to enter. If you felt this message was written just for you, it's because it was. You were never forgotten. You were being prepared. So if your spirit is rising, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to Zodiac Secrets Revealed. This is your spiritual home, and your story is just beginning.